On October 26, 2005, the Chicago White Sox won their first World Series in 88 years, breaking the curse of Shoeless Joe. They won 99 games in the regular season and went 11-1 in the playoffs, still an all-time record. They did this thanks to a core of solid pitching and defense. Many gave general manager Kenny Williams the credit for this World Series win, including Oprah.
Ken Williams is the general manager, and you put this team together. What do you want to say?
Well, a couple of things, actually. First of all,
However, by wins above replacement, the top four players on the team, pitchers Mark Burley and John Garland, first baseman Paul Konerko, and center fielder Aaron Rowan, were all acquired by the previous general manager Ron Schueler. More on him later. The White Sox gave the credit to Kenny Williams, who after that World Series win, won just a single playoff game. And since 2013, the Chicago White Sox have been the worst team in baseball. Some might call it a collapse. It would be wrong to call the 2005 White Sox a fluke because the 06 team picked up right where they left off. Between 2005 and 2006, the White Sox roster didn't change much. In the offseason, center fielder Aaron Rowan was dealt for Jim Thome, who made the All-Star team and led the 2006 White Sox in wins above replacement. So that trade worked out pretty well. Unfortunately, center field prospect Chris Young was dealt for starting pitcher Javier Vasquez, pushing young starter Brandon McCarthy to the bullpen. Williams has since expressed regret at putting McCarthy in the pen, saying that they should have gone to a six-man rotation instead, but says the people below him talked him out of it. The White Sox finished the first half 57-31, 2 games behind the Tigers for the best record in the American League. Unfortunately, at the trading deadline, the White Sox did absolutely nothing despite pitching and outfield concerns, and ended up blowing a 9-game lead in the wild card to the Minnesota Twins. In 2008, the White Sox did manage to rebound after a subpar season and make the playoffs, but over the course of many years, the White Sox made several bad decisions that would keep them out of the playoffs for years to come. In 2010, that included getting rid of Jim Thome and letting him go to the Minnesota Twins, proceeded to hit walk-off home runs against the White Sox and take their division lead that they had away from them. Williams later blamed manager Ozzie Guillen for getting rid of Thome, and tried to compensate in the next offseason by signing slugger Adam Dunn as a replacement. And in 2011, Dunn had one of the worst seasons of all time.
Here is Adam Dunn. As a young power hitter, he was fearsome and consistent. He very clearly rises toward the top of the pack here. In fact, after 10 seasons, he was off to the third best home run hitting start out of all these guys. 5 years later, Adam Dunn was out of baseball completely. What happened between this and that? Well, 2011 happened. So Alex, you have been studying Adam Dunn's infamous 2011 season, yes?
It is very worth studying.
Please promise me you're going to tell the folks about the Clayton Kershaw thing.
I promise, John. In 2011, whenever Dunn faced a lefty on the mound, to be specific, his baseball abilities were relegated to somewhere between that of a drunk penguin and a blindfolded three-toed sloth. Which is weird because throughout the first decade of his career, the left-handed Dunn was totally competent, generally even downright good against southpaws, as reflected in his slugging percentage, which is a metric that basically takes batting average and then properly weighs extra base hits. Dunn slugged .465 against lefties over those first 10 years, never dropping under .416 in a single season. Now, he may have started a bit of a decline in the years approaching 2011, but still no one could have foreseen one of the most spectacular and extreme outliers in baseball history. Beginning with a strikeout here versus Tony Sipp on April 3rd, and ending with a flyout at the hands of Everett Teaford on September 24th, Dunn had 94 at-bats versus lefties in 2011. He turned those 94 at-bats into 5 singles and a double. That's 7 total bases in 94 at-bats. Good for a slugging percentage of .074. Let's give that .074 number some context. Among players in the live ball era with that many at-bats in a season versus left-handed pitchers, no one else is under 116. And since 1975, that .074 mark is literally half the next worst season of futility versus lefties.
After that disastrous season, Ozzie Guillen was forced out and ownership sided with Kenny Williams. Ace Mark Burley signed with the Marlins to join with Ozzie. However, one glimmer of hope came when the White Sox promoted a young pitcher from the bullpen named Chris Sale to replace Burley as in the rotation. Sale proved to be an ace, and the White Sox led the division until September 24th when they collapsed at the hands of the Detroit Tigers. After that season, Kenny Williams was kicked upstairs to team president, and lifelong Cubs fan Rick Hahn became the new GM. In the years that followed, the White Sox varied from mediocre to just downright awful. A whole episode could be focused on the 2016 team, who after a 23-10 start in 2016, the team collapsed yet again, going just 55-74 the rest of the way, leading to a full-on rebuild. Adam Eaton and newcomer Todd Frazier feuded the whole season. Amidst the middle of the fall, the White Sox dealt Eric Johnson and some random prospect named Fernando Tatis Jr. to the San Diego Padres for James Shields, who proceeded to be the worst starting pitcher in baseball, putting up a 6.77 ERA. Approaching the trade deadline, ace pitcher Chris Sale threw a temper tantrum over throwback jerseys he didn't want to pitch in, as he cut up the jerseys and was suspended for 5 games from the team. This all but ensured a rebuild would happen at the end of the season. To finish off the terrible 2016 for the White Sox, the rival Chicago Cubs won the World Series that year, and the media talked about the event like the White Sox had never won in 2005 at all. That offseason, the White Sox traded Eaton and Sale away in deals that netted prospects Yoan Moncada, Michael Kopech, and Lucas Giolito. Things seemed to be heading in the right direction. 2 years after the White Sox seemed primed to make a big move in the offseason, that move was either to sign Bryce Harper or Manny Machado. Machado was especially favored because he could have been a replacement for what Fernando Tatis Jr. should have been, a White Sox star shortstop, but was instead in the Padres organization as the number 2 prospect in baseball. The White Sox failed to sign Machado as owner Jerry Reinsdorf offered him $50 million less than the San Diego Padres, Machado's new team, where he would join Tatis Jr. Kenny Williams had not much to say other than that he was shocked.
Well, I'm wearing my shades so that you guys don't see the shock in my eyes.
Let's turn our attention to the man who preceded Williams as general manager, Ronald Richard Schuler. Schuler was the general manager of the Sox from 1991 to 2000. They're one of the best teams in baseball over that span. Before this role, he worked in the organization the Oakland A's, who won the World Series in 1989. After stepping down as the White Sox GM in 2000, he became vice president of the franchise, a scout, a special consultant to Chairman Jerry Reinsdorf, and an advisor to General Manager Kenny Williams. He worked in this new position through the 2002 season. The White Sox would win the World Series 3 years later. Before the 2003 season, he was hired by the Chicago Cubs as a special assistant to the president and general manager. The Cubs nearly won the pennant that year, but failed due to Steve Bartman and Dusty Baker. 2 years later, the St. Louis Cardinals hired Schuler to be the special assistant to the general manager. They won the World Series in 2006 with him as part of the organization. In 2008, the San Francisco Giants hired Schuler to be a scout and evaluate major and minor league players and acquisitions. The Giants would go on to win the World Series in 2010, 2012, and 2014. In November 2009, the Washington Nationals hired Schuler as special advisor to GM Mike Rizzo. And in that period, the Nationals went from being one of the worst franchises in baseball to one of the best. So essentially, every franchise that Schuler worked his magic on and won the World Series or came close to doing so. He's a man who deserves the credit for the White Sox winning the World Series, which instead went to Jerry Reinsdorf and Kenny Williams. The reason the White Sox won the World Series is because of the magic Schuler was able to work with the franchise. Not because of owner Jerry Reinsdorf or general manager Kenny Williams, who got all the credit and have since driven the team into the ground. And that explains this collapse.
Pops him up. Gillespie. And now Beckham. And we find another way. Yet another way. That's hard to believe.
I'm not sure what Gordon Beckham was doing there, as Connor Gillespie had that ball all the way, and Beckham came up over the mound to the third base side, and the ball just dropped. And just like that, it goes E4. Chris Sale cannot win. This is a very easy play for Connor Gillespie, who's calling for it all the way. And one of the things that Addison Reed has to do there is act as the traffic cop.
Oh, you gotta be bleeping me. You have got to be this